Okay, so for reading today, we're going to do some practice with summarizing. And we're going to be working on summarizing nonfiction or informational text. So we're going to come back to this screen here in just a minute and work through a few of these slides. First, we're going to go watch a video of what it means to summarize, and then we're going to do some practice together. So let's watch this video first.
Hello readers, today I'm going to be talking about the skill of summary, which you might be familiar with in the form of summarizing stories. It's like a retelling, but shorter, and in your own words. This is an important skill, summarizing fiction, but it's not what we're talking about today. This kind of summarizing is used when you want to sum up the information in a non-fiction passage, like a magazine article, a book, a news story, a scientific paper. Most scientific papers begin with a quick retelling of what the paper's about. So say you're a scientist and you discovered a cure for robo-flu. Let's say robots can get the flu, first of all. And the abstract, the summary retelling at the very beginning of your paper about your cure says, hey, under these conditions, we learned that this medicine cures robo-flu. And then the reader goes on to look at everything else you've written in your long scholarly paper. So how do you do it? To make a summary, you will need your own words, the order of events or information from the text, and important details from the text. So what?
Now, I'm going to stop right here for just a second. And when we're doing our summary, we're going to really try to make sure we focus on this, that you want to make sure you're putting it in your own words. You're going to make sure it's in order, and that we're going to pull important details from the text. And we're going to practice how to do all that.
What's not in the summary? Every last detail from the original text. I think I first read something like this in a Neil Gaiman novel, but here's the deal. Imagine you were coming to visit me, and you asked me for a map of my neighborhood. Now, if I included every single detail in my map, who lives next to me, every tuft of grass under a tree, it would stop being a map and just become a one-to-one scale drawing of my neighborhood. In other words, it would be useless as a map. A summary is a map of my neighborhood with only the important bits in it.
And that's key, what he just said. You want to make sure that when you're doing a summary, it's only the important bits. We don't want to rewrite everything word for word because the author has already done that.
My apartment, a metro stop, Rock Creek Park. When we make a summary of a text, we are in effect making a simple map of that text. And it's your job to determine what details are necessary, the most needed. Like, say somewhere deep in that paper on how you discovered a cure for the robo-flu, you had written, it was raining on the cold the November day our team first identified the robo-medicine. Like, would that be an important enough detail to include in the summary? I'd say no. The big picture is that the team discovered the medicine, not that it was raining when it happened. But if the cure for robot flu involved garlic and motor oil, yes, that's an important detail, because it relates back to the big picture. We discovered a medicine, and here's what's in it. To conclude, let me summarize. A summary is a short retelling of a piece of text with only the important details included. It's like a simple map of a place.
A short retelling with only the important details included. So when we're doing our summaries, we only want to make sure we're finding the most important details and including that in our summary.
You can learn anything. David out.
All right, so let's go look now at this right here. We're going to go through a few of these slides. All right, summarizing nonfiction. Remember, nonfiction is the same thing as informational text. It's real factual text. And so what is a summary? Well, Webster's dictionary calls summarizing the general idea in a brief form. Brief is another word that means the same as short. Those are synonyms, brief, short. Summarizing is when we take a selection of text and break it down into the main points that are worth remembering and noting. Just like he just said in the video, we don't have to retell everything. We only want to make sure we're including the main points. Why do we write summaries? Well, there's a lot of reasons why we write summaries. The main reason we write a summary, it's written in order to show your understanding. When you write a summary, you demonstrate your understanding by taking a large piece of text and putting it into your own words. You're asked to write summaries so that, when I look at your work, I want to know that you understood the text. And so you may be asked to write a summary to show that you understand the text. And if you are able to pull out the main points from a text and be able to put it back in your own words, then that's a good sense of that you really understood what you read. Okay. And summaries are written to share with other people, okay? Because maybe you want to just give them a brief understanding of the main idea. Maybe you don't want to tell them everything about that subject, but you just want to give them a little brief understanding so they can kind of get an idea of what you're talking about, okay? And what does a good summary include? A good summary pulls out main ideas. A good summary focuses on key details. A good summary uses keywords and phrases. A good summary breaks down the larger ideas. And a good summary includes only enough writing to convey the gist. We're going to work on these main idea and details. You want to make sure you're using keywords from the passages that you're working with this week. And you're going to work on breaking down that larger idea into these main ideas. And like it says here, you only want to include enough to get the idea across. We don't want to rewrite everything. All right. Main idea versus details. Summaries include the big ideas and leave out the details of a text. These big ideas are called main ideas. Main ideas are often found at the beginning of a paragraph. So when you're reading a paragraph, usually the first sentence is going to be your main idea because it's going to introduce to you what that paragraph is going to be about. And the rest of the paragraph are called details. And details support the main idea by giving more information about that main idea. So let's do some practice. What are the main ideas in these paragraphs about the Titanic? We're going to stop and do a paragraph at a time. So the first paragraph. When the Titanic set sail on April 10th, 1912, it was the largest passenger ship ever built. It was named for the Titans, huge make-believe people who once said to rule the earth. All right, if we stop and look at this paragraph, what do you think is the main idea? Which sentence tells the main idea of that paragraph? Yeah, the first one. When the Titanic set sail on April 10th, 1912, it was the largest passenger ship ever built. That is your main idea. It's introducing to you what we're talking about, which is the Titanic. And what was so special about the Titanic was that it was the largest passenger ship ever built. This right here is a detail telling you about that large passenger ship. It was so large that they named it after the Titans, which were huge make-believe people who used to rule the earth, is according to the myth. Okay? All right, so let's look at the second paragraph. The Titanic was a good name for this ship because it was the largest movable object ever made. It was nearly 900 feet long and as tall as an 11-story building. The ship was longer than the Washington Monument is high. The steam from its 29 boilers rose from 3 huge funnels along the top. A 4th funnel was just for appearance. Which sentence do you think is the main idea of that second paragraph? Yeah. Should have been highlighting this. It would be this one. The Titanic was a good name for this ship because it was the largest movable object ever made. Now, when we look at the second paragraph, we know that this paragraph is going to be talking about just how big it was. When it says it was the largest movable object ever made, give me a detail now from the rest of the paragraph that's going to go back and explain this main idea right here. How large was it? Okay, one of the details was that it was nearly 900 feet long. Good, it was as tall as an 11-story building. That means if you went into a building and you got in an elevator, you'd have to ride up 11 floors to the top of that building. That would be a very tall ship. What's another detail? Good, it was longer than the Washington Monument is high. So if you took the Washington Monument and laid it down, instead of standing it tall, it would be longer than the Washington Monument. What's another detail about how big it was? Yeah, it had 4 funnels, 3 that were actually being used. 1 was just for looks. And within those funnels, there were 29 boilers that were used to power this ship. So this was a massive ship. Okay, and now these are details telling us why it was such the largest movable object ever made. Now look at the last paragraph. Inside, the Titanic was like a floating palace. It had its own grand staircase as well as a gym, elevators, and a swimming pool. There were 2 barbershops and a restaurant with 49 tables. Which sentence do you think is the main idea in this paragraph? Which sentence tells you what the whole paragraph is about? Yeah, it's that first one again. Inside, the Titanic was like a floating palace. Now, give me a detail from the rest of the paragraph that tells why it was a floating palace. What made it a palace? Okay, one detail is it had a grand staircase. Okay, it had a gym, elevators, a swimming pool. What else? Yeah, not one, but 2 barbershops and a restaurant with 49 tables. So it had several things that its guests could use while they were sailing on this ship, okay? And so it was like a floating palace because it had all these things. It had the grand staircase and a gym and elevators. And so these were all details that tell you why it was like a palace. All right, so today what you're going to do, you're going to be using your Newtown summary, this paper, to be working on a summary of over the text. You're going to be doing it over the text dollars and cents. So you're going to be using 59, 60, and 61 to write your summary. But let's look at your sheet first. Thinking about the Titanic we just went over, you're going to do the same thing with your dollars and cents text. So you're going to go through and you're going to answer your questions. So let's go through and let's just verbally answer these questions about the Titanic text. Who was the Titanic text about? All right. On our Newtown, we could say that the who in this one, we could have written, would have been the passengers on the Titanic. Okay. And on your Newtown, it says what? What was the, what usually refers to a thing or an event? What thing are we talking about in this passage here? Yeah, we're talking about the Titanic. And so the event would be the first voyage of the Titanic, the first time it set sail. Where? Where did it set sail? Does it tell us a specific place here? No, in this passage, it doesn't tell us the name of the port that it, was sailed from or whatever. But we do know, we could say that this was on the ocean because we know that ships sail on the ocean. So we could say that the where was out on the ocean. When? When would this text take place? Yeah, April 10th, 1912, because that was in our very first sentence that told us when it first set sail. Why? Why did it set sail? Okay, somebody had this idea to design one of the largest movable objects ever. And so they decided to invent and create this ship that would be like a floating palace. And so they created the ship for people to be able to sail on. Those passengers that we put up in the who box, they could sail on it. And how? Now, this one doesn't tell us how the Titanic was built, but we do know, we can put that we know it was built to be one of the largest movable objects. And we know how because it says that they built it to be 900 feet long. It was as tall as an 11-story building. So we do understand how it was named the largest movable object because of just how large it was and how many massive, like the funnels and things that it had on it. And so it was built to be this grand floating palace. And so what you're going to do, you're going to take your text, dollars and cents, okay, and you're going to use that story. And what I would do, I would go through looking at each paragraph, like I said, and trying to find your who, your where, your when, your why, how. And then what you're going to do after you fill in your questions up here, you're going to come down to the bottom, and then you're going to write a 1-paragraph summary. Remember, a summary is a short retell. You're going to pull out the most important points that you think are in dollars and cents, okay? And you're going to write them on your summary, your Newtown summary, okay? Now remember, you don't rewrite everything. Just try to find the most important points and write them in a good paragraph that makes sense. And remember, you can add a detail or two to help your paragraph make sense too. When you get finished, as with any writing, always go back and check your work for mistakes.